Shalom from Israel to all of the Daystar viewers around the world. I'm Moshe Bar Tzvi, the producer and founder of Israel Now News. We at Israel Now News are dedicated to bringing you the full story and the truth about Israel from Israel. It's written in the Holy Bible when David said in Psalm 25:5, "Lead me in your truth and teach me, for you are the God of my salvation. For you I wait all the day long." And God says in Zechariah 8:16, "These are the things that you shall do. Speak out the truth to one another. Judge with truth and judgment to peace in your gates. And always search for the truth, and the truth shall set you free." John 8:31. I hope you enjoyed the program. God bless you from Jerusalem. Shalom, shalom.
Welcome to Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan Elrom.
And I'm Erin Viner.
In our top story, Republican presidential candidate Mitt Romney has publicly declared that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. While on a recent visit to the Holy Land, Romney vowed his solidarity with the Jewish state. He promised never to needlessly criticize Israel and to forever be a steadfast ally. With regard to Iran, Romney said the United States has a solemn duty and a moral imperative to prevent Iran from achieving nuclear weapons capability. He said, "Make no mistake, the Ayatollahs in Iran are testing our moral defenses. They want to know who will object and who will look the other way." The GOP hopeful added that we will not look away, nor will our country ever look away from our passion and commitment to Israel.
There's been a major backlash from the representatives of the Palestinian government over Mitt Romney's visit to Israel. The spokesman of the terrorist organization Hamas released a statement saying that by declaring Jerusalem to be the capital of Israel, Romney insulted Palestinians and Muslims worldwide. According to Fawzi Barhoum, Romney's racist and extremist statements deny the rights of the Palestinian people, that Jerusalem is their capital, and that they will never give it up. The Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine terror group called for a total boycott of the U.S. presidential candidate, and other radical groups voiced their own discontentment with the presidential hopeful.
According to a recent report released by the World Bank, the Palestinian economy is unable to support independent statehood. The Palestinian economy has long suffered from mismanagement of funds and widespread government corruption. Densely populated Gaza City has one of the highest rates of unemployment and poverty in the world. Saeb Erekat, the Palestinian chief negotiator, recently disclosed that the PA is in debt to the tune of more than $1.5 billion. And despite a $500 million infusion from Saudi Arabia, it was unable to pay public sector employees for the month of July. Last week, Israel Now News reported that the Israeli government advanced $45 million to help the PA ease the financial crisis. John Nasser, author of the critical World Bank report, said, "The PA depends on foreign aid to sustain its economy. It does not have an established trade policy and must develop one in order to encourage the private sector and increase the workforce." The report revealed that the educational system in the Palestinian territories does not provide students with basic skills that are required by a modern economy. It also noted that only 30% of private land owned by Palestinians was properly registered, making the amount of land suitable for development scarce. Corruption within the PA runs rampant, and government misappropriation of funds is largely to blame for the financial crisis.
The Israeli High Court of Justice has requested that the state provide a housing solution to 27 Palestinian families who have been found guilty of living in illegal structures in Hebron. The structures in question were built on top of an archaeological site, which was deemed as such during the British Mandate. The Israeli government razed the illegal structures in 2003, but they were subsequently rebuilt. The Israeli Supreme Court ruled that the structures were illegal in 2007 and ordered their demolition, although the government allowed the residents to remain until an alternative housing plan was provided. In the years since the original eviction order, 10 additional structures were added by the residents in an apparent attempt to establish squatters' rights. Many in Israel have argued that it is not the responsibility of the state to create housing solutions for people who intentionally build without purchasing the land or obtaining the necessary building permits.
Hezbollah has released video footage of the ambush and subsequent kidnapping of Israeli soldiers Ehud Goldwasser and Eldad Regev in 2006. This incident was the catalyst which sparked the Second Lebanon War. Although the IDF has refused to comment, officials have stated that the video is authentic. Colonel Dror Platin served the IDF as Deputy Chief of the Galilee Division during this painful chapter in Israeli history. He said that the release of the video on the Al-Ma'ayadan network is part of Hezbollah's psychological warfare against Israel.
Police in New Delhi have officially released the names of the Iranian Revolutionary Guards they believe are responsible for the February bombing in the Indian capital that targeted an Israeli diplomat. The emissary's wife, Tal Yehoshua Koren, and her driver were both injured in that attack. The Times of India quoted officials accusing Iranian terrorists of launching coordinated attacks against Israeli delegations in Georgia, Bangkok, and New Delhi, confirming allegations from the Israeli government that Iran is systematically plotting to harm Israelis at various locations throughout the world.
Britain's Foreign Office has reported that Syria's senior diplomat in London has defected. The British Foreign Office released a statement saying, Mr. Khalid al-Ayyubi has told us that he is no longer willing to represent a regime that has committed such violent and oppressive acts against its own people. London went on to say, we urge others to follow his example, to disassociate themselves from the crimes being committed against the Syrian people by the Assad government, and to support a peaceful and free future for Syria. Rights groups claim that more than 20,000 people have been killed in the uprising, which began 17 months ago.
U.S. Secretary of Defense Leon Panetta was in Israel last week as part of his trip to the Middle East and Asia. The defense chief met with the Israeli Air Force soldiers who operate the Iron Dome missile defense system, partially funded by the United States. Panetta said that he is proud of the defense partnership shared between the U.S. and Israel over the past several years, and he described that relationship as stronger than ever. The defense secretary added that the more that the United States can support Israel in building defense systems such as the Iron Dome, the more Washington can send a clear signal to others that Israel is capable of defending itself against any attacks.
Last week, during the opening ceremony of the Olympic Games, NBC reporter Bob Costas took a stand to honor the memory of the Munich 11. Despite the Olympic Committee's refusal to observe a moment of silence for the 11 Israeli Olympians who were murdered by Palestinian terrorists at the Munich Games in 1972, Costas reminded the world of their tragic murder. As the Israeli Olympic team entered the arena during the ceremony, he recounted the tragedy of the murders and the controversy surrounding the IOC's decision not to honor their memory at the opening ceremony. This brave move proves that one man can make a difference. After 40 years of avoiding the subject, the world was finally forced to look at the Israeli flag and remember the 11 murdered Israeli Olympians.
The U.S. State Department has released its annual report on religious freedom, which reflects a dramatic rise in anti-Semitism worldwide. According to the document, anti-Semitism was manifested in Holocaust denial or glorification, as well as the blatant opposition to certain Israeli policies. The report also cited a rising number of nationalistic movements and the spiking of traditional forms of anti-Semitism, such as conspiracy theories, acts of desecration, assault, blood libel, and cartoons demonizing Jews. The report noted Iranian websites promoting the denial of the Holocaust, as well as the rise of anti-Semitic violence in France, including the desecration of synagogues and cemeteries. Mention was also made of the enforcement of strict Islamic law in the Hamas-controlled Gaza Strip, involving the harassment of non-Muslims and religious restrictions imposed on women. That concludes the news portion of our show. Stay tuned for Ask the Source with Josh Reinstein.
Hello and welcome to Ask the Source. I'm your host Josh Reinstein, and we're here on a beautiful day in Jerusalem on our rooftop studio. Our guest today is Yishai Fleischer, host of Israel's only broadcast radio English language program. Yishai, thank you for being on the show.
Josh, it's great to be here with you in Jerusalem.
You know, Yishai, I'm a huge fan of your radio show, and I think the main reason is because you really understand the biblical importance of Judea and Samaria, or what people would call the West Bank. Why is Judea and Samaria so important to us spiritually, biblically? What's the connection?
Josh, thanks so much for asking that. And I think it is very important that you're asking that because most people don't talk about this. And it's funny how much the world is trying to push us off the very place that has the most historical significance for us. And the reason it has the most historical significance is because if you go into the Bible, if you look into it, if you read it, you'll see that there's a road, a pathway. It's basically a north-south axis. And that north-south axis starts in Beersheba and ends in Shechem. And along that route are the towns of Hebron, and then Bethlehem, then Jerusalem, then Beit El, Shiloh, and again Shechem. These are the towns where our matriarchs and patriarchs walked. They made their whole history here. Now, they left very successful ventures in other places in southern Turkey or in Iraq or even in Egypt, and they moved to the Holy Land by God's word. And God said to them, walk this land, north and south, east and west, explode forth, like he told Jacob, go forth, north, south, east, and west, walk in this land. Through this walking, you will purchase it, you will own it, you will make it your own. Now, these are the places of our spiritual anchoring. Because our parents walked here, and they built their houses here, and they built their altars here, and they were buried here, these are the places that connect us to this land. Without these places, we are sliding off of this land, and our enemies know that. And so we need to grip our holy soil, our ancestral, historical homeland. If not, we're going to slide right out of this place.
But Judea and Samaria is always a source of political tension. You know, the world's always trying to divide Judea and Samaria, give it to this group, give it to that group. There's Hamas, there's the PA. If Judea and Samaria is our land, given to us by God, why are so many forces trying to take that away from us?
Well, first thing, Josh, is that while Judea and Samaria and all of Israel were given to the Jewish people by God, they were also recognized as such by the international community in the 1920s, who really said the historical connection of the Jewish people is unquestionable, and therefore you have every single right to this piece of land. And the League of Nations and the San Remo Convention all got together and said, this is the Jewish people's homeland. And so therefore international law actually backed the biblical idea and the historical idea. That's step one. But when the world realized that the Jewish people were actually going to take this land and going to take it, make it their own, it was a little bit like Pharaoh in Egypt. What happened? He said, okay, you can go, Jews. The minute he saw that they were leaving, he was like, wait a minute, I don't want to lose you guys. You guys are my slaves and servants. I want you back. So he went to war to catch them back. So that's exactly what happened with the world. The minute they realized that this was no joke, and that the ingathering of the exiles was going to happen to the land of Israel, to that very land which they recognized, they said, whoa, we do not want to empower these people to have this great vision, because there's a power struggle in this world. There's a power struggle in this world, and the power struggle is between nations that want to have supremacy, or ideologies that want to have supremacy. For example, Islam, which is an idea, which has a kernel of ideology in it that says that we came to replace other world religions. And also Catholicism also had that kind of idea, that the Jews were only left aside as a doctrine of the witness. When the Jewish people started ingathering in the land of Israel, it started seeming all too real. And they wanted to stop that. So Judea Samaria became this little fulcrum through which they were able to kind of chip away at the sovereignty of Israel. Now, the way they did it at first was that the British backed the Jordanians and the Egyptians in a war to try to destroy Israel. And in that war, in 1948, Israel was not destroyed. Israel gained independence, but it did lose the biblical homeland and the heartland. And so, therefore, in 1967, when the Jews pushed back the Jordanians and the Egyptians from Gaza and the Jordanians from Judea and Samaria, we actually liberated our ancestral homeland. We came back. We're not settlers there, we are resettlers. But since then, the efforts of the international community have been to undermine that victory. The Six-Day War was a great turning point in faith throughout the whole world, because God revealed himself. And people who don't like God and people who don't like the Jewish people's strength have been fighting ever since to undermine our sovereignty in Judea and Samaria.
Well, I think what you said was exactly right. Judea and Samaria is the heartland of Israel. It's been the heartland of Israel for thousands of years. Why do so many people call it the West Bank? Where did that come from?
Well, again, that is a terminology that was raised up through the idea that somehow this land belonged to somebody else. For example, the Kingdom of Jordan, which is actually not a kingdom that was around not so long ago. This was a British-created a gift to one of their friends from Saudi Arabia. And so therefore they wanted to say Judea and Samaria belonged to Jordan, as Jordan illegally occupied it in 1948 for 19 years till 1967. That's where the terminology, the West Bank, came in, as though it was the West Bank of the Jordan River, which belonged to the Kingdom of Jordan. And that way of thinking, trying to shift consciousness away from Judea and Samaria being Jewish, is actually an old trick. It's a trick that was created by the emperor, the Roman Emperor Hadrian. When he destroyed Jerusalem, he realized that the Jewish people are a comeback people. They're always coming back. And if you kill them, you're only cutting off the tail of the lizard. It's going to grow back. So he said, we got to change the way people remember Jerusalem. Maybe they'll forget about Jerusalem and Judea and Samaria. And he renamed Jerusalem Aeola Capitolina. He internationalized it. And so too for Judea and Samaria and for all of Israel, he named it Syria Palestina. That battle to keep Israel Israel and not Palestine is the same battle we are fighting today. It's a battle of consciousness. It's a battle of memory. And people today out there change the name of Judea and Samaria in order to erase our memory. For example, just today in the Jean France Press, I saw an article that was titled, Occupied Jerusalem, as though Jerusalem is not Jewish or not Israeli.
Unbelievable. Yishai, there are literally tens of millions of people watching this show. What message do you have for our viewers?
Well, the message is very simple. First thing, know the truth, that Judea and Samaria and the whole land of Israel belongs to the Jewish people. But we're not here to make war, we're here to make peace. We are cousins with the rest of the people in this region. We can work it out. We can be a light unto the nations by first starting out to make a better Middle East. And God knows that the Middle East could use a little bit of love and could use a little bit of help and could use a little bit of positivity. So you got to pray for Jerusalem, but pray for the integrity of Jerusalem, because with the integrity of Jerusalem will come a better, healthier Middle East. We pray for the people of Syria who are being slaughtered right now, because from Jerusalem we broadcast peace. But that peace will never come in pieces. If our land is torn asunder from us, there will never be peace in this region. It won't be good for Arabs or anybody around the globe. The Temple Mount is a place that broadcasts the best message in the world, the godly message, and that's only going to come through his chosen servants, and that's the Jewish people who will have sovereignty in Jerusalem.
Thank you, Yishai, for being on the show. And thank you for tuning in to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. Now back to the studio.
Up next, shining light from Israel.
What makes the miracles of Jesus even more miraculous? Standing where they happened, in Israel. Come visit Capernaum, where Jesus restored a paralytic's helpless legs. Sail the Sea of Galilee, where Jesus walked on the water. Stroll through the Garden of Gethsemane, where Jesus healed a servant's ear. To learn more about standing where it all happened, in Israel, visit www.goisrael.com. Come visit Israel.
Did you know that there is a particular place on Earth that God seems to be really fond of? That's right, an everyday place with streets and buildings and people. Not a metaphor or a hypothetical, a geographical location. And it's called Jerusalem. Over the years, all sorts of wars have broken out around Jerusalem, and many terrible things have happened to this city. So naturally, many efforts have been made to fix the problems that keep popping up. Like the passing of hundreds of UN resolutions, or awarding the Nobel Peace Prize to Yasser Arafat. Heck, even Bill Clinton tried playing his saxophone when all else failed. But it seems like the more we try to fix things, the worse they become. Now, we could continue coming up with elaborate strategies and complex plans to restore peace and well-being to Jerusalem, but sometimes the most complex problems are solved in the simplest ways. So what we decided to do, and what we're asking you to do, is the simplest thing anybody possibly could do. Pray. That's right, pray. You might be thinking, well, I live in Ireland or New Zealand or Nebraska. Why should I pray for a city I've never been to? Well, to give credit where credit is due, the idea has been around for a while, and it turns out we're actually commanded to pray for Jerusalem. See, we told you God was fond of them. And then there's always the possibility that praying for peace and goodwill is always the right thing to do. Now, we thought that praying for the peace of Jerusalem might sound complicated or like a lot of work, so we had the bright idea of starting small and keeping it super simple. What if we began by praying on one day every year? Just one. Sort of how we in America eat turkey the fourth Thursday of every November, or how Canadians celebrate their national animal on Beaver Day, the last Friday in February. What if we prayed for the peace of Jerusalem the first Sunday of every October, just making it a part of our prayer service that week? God might think it's really cool to have his children praying in different languages, in different ways, for the very same thing. And while some remain skeptical that prayer makes a difference, hundreds of thousands have already committed to pray for the peace of Jerusalem this one day a year. Who knows? Maybe prayer will remind us that we're not in charge of the world to begin with. Or maybe prayer will move God's heart to do something wonderful in Jerusalem. Or maybe, just maybe, prayer will change us. Let's find out. Sign the prayer resolution and mark your calendar for the first Sunday of every October. And join us and the world as we unite in prayer for the peace of Jerusalem.
Please stay tuned for the ICEJ report from the International Christian Embassy in Jerusalem.
What makes the miracles of Jesus even more miraculous? Standing where they happened, in Israel. Come explore Jerusalem, where Jesus opened blind eyes. Visit the hills of Galilee, where Jesus fed the multitude. Stroll through Capernaum, where Jesus lived and taught and healed. To learn more about standing where it all happened in Israel, visit www.goisrael.com. Come visit Israel.
You'll never be the same.
Beit Singer is a residence for approximately 95 children ages 5 to 18 in northern Israel. The children who reside there have been removed from their homes by the state of Israel due to abusive or high-risk family situations not conducive to the child's best interest.
Here the children have an open space that they didn't enjoy before. They study in regular schools and learn new ways of behavior and have opportunities to start a new life. Most of them end up serving in the army, and many remain to live in the valley. There are 4 staff members who were once children in the home. We provide everything for the children: food, clothing, dental treatment. Everything that a child would need from his family, we provide at this home. We provide a safe environment and all the tools that a child needs in order to grow and develop.
Many of the children at Beit Singer have suffered severe abuse at home, and the traumas caused by the abuse can leave lasting scars. The residence provides compassionate mentors that care for the children and help to reshape and rebuild their lives.
It is difficult for kids who were raised in the children's home to leave because they have been sheltered like in a greenhouse. It isn't easy for them, and it isn't something that they like to think about. But we try to help them along the way towards the challenges of vocational training or ongoing studies. We don't let them go so quickly. We continue to help them and release them slowly like parents.
We at the Christian Embassy want to make a difference in these children's lives by providing for their basic needs. A more suitable living environment for these little ones who have suffered so much already is an urgent need. The housing facilities for these children were built 70 years ago, and the buildings are in desperate need of renovation.
We have to remember that the children have been wounded through sexual and mental abuse and many other types of abuse or neglect. We have to redo the buildings so that they are made more suitable for the use of the children. We also need to invest more in the psychological and therapeutic treatment of the children. The state provides significant assistance for the children's home, but it only covers 70% of the required budget. For a child who has been molested, it isn't enough to provide treatment once a week. They need assistance at least 2 or 3 times a week in order to deal with the trauma.
The Word of God teaches us an important lesson in Proverbs chapter 19, verse 17. It says, "He who has pity on the poor lends to the Lord, and He will pay back what He has given." The Word of God tells us as we reach out to the poor and to the needy in our societies, it is as if we were lending to the Lord, and He promises us that He will bless us in return. And I want to invite you today to become part of the social outreach of the International Christian Embassy. Consider placing a financial seed into our ministry and help us to bless the Jewish people more fully. We are your embassy here in Jerusalem, your outstretched arm to the nation of Israel. May the Lord bless you here from Zion.
That's all for this edition of Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan El-Rom.
And I'm Erin Viner. Please join us again next week for all your Israel updates.